Alright, in this tutorial I'm going to take my low poly table here and I'm going to create textures for it in Substance Painter. So I'm going to File, Export, Export Selected. I'm going to come over here and do Table LP, Save. I'm overwriting an existing one so I get an error warning. I click OK. Alright, in Substance Painter I've already gone through File, New, Select. I've selected my table low poly and said OK. I have my table here. Now before I can start plugging materials in, I do need to bake out the maps that the software needs. So I can just click use low poly mesh as high poly mesh and click bake. And that's going to go through and generate the basic maps that I need in order to be able to use the materials on it. Right? And so it's going through and it's baking them out, and then we're going to see those populate down here. Alright, there you go. So the maps have all popped in. And so now I can come in and start dropping materials on. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use Smart Materials. And I want to go in here, I want to find a nice wood texture, a good wood material. Let's scroll through. Like what's this? Wood multi. Let's see what he does. Wood multi-layer. Alright, so he is processing. The wood's coming in. And let's see how our table looks with him. Alright, it's going through, it's processing all its elements. I'm going to hover over the edge and drag this down. If you hit Tab on your keyboard, you can make it full screen. If I orbit around, you see there's our table with the materials on it. So there's a couple of issues I'm seeing. We have a bad smoothing group right here, so we need to go in and adjust our smoothing group and re-export this out. So let's go over to Max. I'm going to select the table here, and I'm just going to say Auto Smooth. Let's see. Alright, that's a lot better on that piece. That's kind of what I was looking for. I might even want to go in here, actually, and select these and assign them a different smoothing group. Alright, that should work pretty good. So I'll go ahead and I'm going to re-export this out again. File, Export, Export Selected. And just so that I don't have to go through and reset up the whole scene, I'm going to save this as MP. And so now I'm going to hit Tab to get back to everything. Down here under Texture Set Settings, under Bake Mesh Maps, I'm going to turn off Use Low Poly as High. I'm going to go in and select that MP version. And now I'm going to bake the default maps using that. And so it's going to go through and it's going to bake out my default maps. Right, so the software's going through and it's processing, it's generating the different textures. You can see here it's already gone through and it's picked up the new smoothing groups, and so it's rendering those out differently. Okay, and so now we're processing everything. And you'll see that, now that you have that, you bake that out, you could put a material on there, and Substance Painter generates all the alternate maps that you need, and you end up with a really great result. One thing that you do need to do, though, is when you're working on a model, right, like we got this model here, one thing I'm looking at, and I notice, is that the wood grain doesn't necessarily go the direction wood grain should. Right? Like the wood grain should go left to right down here on the bottom. So I'm going to come in here, and there's some areas where, yes, we want the wood grain to go vertically like it does. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this layer and turn off the one underneath it. And now in this layer, I'm going to go through, I've expanded the wood multi-layer, and I'm going to start going through and taking a look at how each of these is set up. And I want to find anywhere that there is a rotation on it. So this wood has a rotation of 90. I'm going to set that to 0. And I'm just going to work my way through the different masks and layers here to see what each one does and look for ones that I can generally kind of go through and rotate around. Because I really want to get the wood setup going in the other direction. Kind of going 90 degrees instead. I could start with each of these individual parts and just kind of see if that's going to fix it. And it looks like it's getting a pretty good result. I now have it kind of going left to right. So what I'll need to do now is just go through and mask out each of the different areas. So if I right click and say add black mask, now I can go through and I could select which spots I want to have that left to right. So if I come in here, you can go ahead and you can just paint a mask, right? You can see it's just coming in. You need to be careful. Substance Painter, for whatever reason, when you go to paint, sometimes it just slops over to other sides. So you got to be careful on that. Another option is actually polygon fill. And when I turn that on, I click and drag, you can see what I'm doing here is I'm actually just selecting which polygons that I want to get this version, right? And so that tends to work out pretty good as well. Going through and selecting your mask. You should be careful which ones you're selecting there. Oops. If you just hit Alt, or if you just click inside this viewport, it spins it. It's honestly, it's a little bit irritating. That can be a little bit frustrating. One thing you'll notice as we look around, you see this weird baking element. What happened there is because these legs kind of disappear inside of part of the table there, what you're seeing is you're seeing the table that gets baked onto that part of the polygon. Now because it's all covered, it's really not an issue for us, right? Because this area here is inside the geometry, so it's really not a problem. All right, and so I'm just looking for anywhere in here where we want kind of a left-right wood grain. Those are the areas that I'm just selecting at this point. Areas like this where it's curved are going to be a little bit trickier. We could go back through our UVs and try and straighten them out, but that's definitely an option if we wanted to do that. All right, so I'm going to say we probably got all the ones we want there to go left, right. I think we want this guy to go left, right. Yeah, that's going to look the most natural, like that was how the piece of wood was brought in and created. Alright, so I'll just finish masking these guys off, like so. There we go. Alright. Alright, so now we have everything that's going left, right. I can actually copy this mask, and I can turn on this other wood multigrain, and I'm just going to right click and say I want to be able to add a black mask, and then inside here right click and say paste into mask, and then see how I pasted it in there. And if I just right click and say invert mask, now I have my wood grain going different directions, right? So the wood, see the wood grain follows the flow of the wood here, right? And so that gives me a really nice result, right? And so now my table has this nice material on it, and what I can do is I can export that out. I can do File, Save, and save it, and then just export. Right? So I would specify the folder again that I want this to go out into, Table, select that folder, and then just export it out in whatever version we want. In this case, I'm just going to export out this version here, Unreal Engine 4, and that's it. That's bringing in an object and adjusting masks inside of Substance Painter.